All right, let's dive into a classic developer debate, Hibernate versus Entity Framework Core. We're talking about the two heavyweight object relational mappers, one from the Java world and one from .NET. And if you work in either of those ecosystems, you're going to want to stick around for this.
I absolutely love this question. It's just a perfect, kind of funny way to frame this whole thing. I mean, the name itself, Hibernate, it just makes you wonder, right? Is it really just the sleepy older cousin to EF Core? Well, as we're about to find out, the real story is way more interesting than that. So first things first, let's talk about EF Core. We'll call it the personal assistant. Before we even touch Hibernate, let's just get on the same page with its .NET counterpart. For a lot of us, this is the default way we think about talking to a database. The workflow with EF Core is honestly so slick. You just define your regular C# classes, your models, you wrap them up in this thing called a DB context, and then you run a couple of commands in your terminal, and boom, just like that, EF Core figures out all the SQL needed to create your database tables for you. It really does feel like magic sometimes.
And that's really the best way to think about it. EF Core isn't just a library. It's a fully integrated tool inside the whole .NET world. It's like having a personal assistant whose whole job is to take all that tedious, repetitive SQL stuff off your plate. That way you get to focus on what actually matters, your application's logic. Okay, so now let's jump over to the Java world, because this is where we find Hibernate's big secret. And that secret is something called JPA. Now, Hibernate plays a very similar role to EF Core, but it works based on a totally different philosophy. And that one difference changes, well, pretty much everything. This right here is the absolute key to understanding the whole thing. JPA, which stands for the Java Persistence API, is not a piece of software. You can't download JPA, it's a specification. Think of it like an official blueprint that says, hey, if you want to be a proper ORM in Java, this is how you have to behave. These are the features you need to have. So what's the result of having a standard like this? You get a whole ecosystem. Hibernate isn't the only game in town. It's just the most popular implementation of that JPA blueprint. You've got others, like EclipseLink and OpenJPA, that all follow the same rules. And that means you could, in theory, swap Hibernate for EclipseLink without having to rewrite your actual persistence code. Pretty cool, right? So if you remember one thing, make it this. This is the relationship. JPA is the contract. It provides the rules of the game. It defines the annotations like @entity and @id. And then Hibernate is the engine that comes in, reads those standard annotations, and does all the heavy lifting of actually generating SQL and talking to the database. Now, if that still feels a little abstract, don't worry. I've got the perfect analogy that's going to make this crystal clear. It's really just the difference between the iPhone and Android. Let's break it down. EF Core is the iPhone. It's a single, tightly bundled product. The hardware, the software, it all comes from one vendor, Apple, or in our case, Microsoft. It just works right out of the box. The Java persistence world, though, that's the Android ecosystem. You have the Android OS, that's our JPA standard. But then different companies like Samsung, Google, or OnePlus, that's our Hibernate, EclipseLink, etc., they all build their own phones based on that standard. They all follow the same rules, but each has its own unique flavor. Okay, so with that big picture in mind, let's get practical. What does all of this actually mean for you when you're sitting down and writing code? When you look at the code side by side, you can definitely see they're related. I mean, they both use simple classes to represent data. But you can also see that difference in approach. In EF Core, you've got that big all-in-one DB context. In the JPA world, you mark your class with a standard @entity annotation, and then you work with it through something like a repository. Under the hood, it's all powered by something called a session, which is kind of like one unit of work that gets created by a bigger object called a session factory. Here's another quick way to think about it. EF Core is like ordering a combo meal. You get the burger, the fries, the drink. It's all bundled together, super convenient. Hibernate and the whole JPA ecosystem, that's more like a buffet. You've got way more choices, you can mix and match different pieces, but it also means you're the one responsible for putting that perfect plate together. So let's wrap all this up. If you're walking away from this, what are the key things you absolutely need to remember? Okay, here it is boiled down. Number one, the most important thing. JPA is the standard. Hibernate is the provider that implements it. EF Core, on the other hand, is both the standard and the provider all in one. Conceptually, EF Core's DB context is kind of like Hibernate's session factory and session working together.
And where you use data annotations in C#, you use annotations in Java. Simple as that.
And hey, let's put it in cultural terms for a second. EF Core just feels like it runs on those high-caffeine Microsoft energy drinks. It's fast, it's modern, it's integrated. Hibernate, with its deep, deep roots in the open-source Java community, well, that feels like it's powered by a nice, steady stream of strong espresso shots. So, at the end of the day, no, Hibernate is not EF Core after a long nap. It's a completely different animal, born from a totally different ecosystem. It is wide awake, it is heavily annotated, and it is, for sure, always caffeinated.